I will be giving my updated election take on the 2028 election. And just to be clear, this video is not based off polls, but how I personally believe national trends will continue to move as we get closer to 2028. So right now, Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom are still the leading um, primary polls are still leading most 2028 Democratic primary polls, and J.D. Vance is still leading most Republican primary polls. But I believe as we get closer to 2028, I believe more progressive candidates like Ro Khanna or AOC will eventually take that top of the ticket. But I do think Ro Khanna will probably do better in a primary. I'm not 100% sure AOC will run for president. I think most likely what happens is AOC will run for the New New York Senate and take Chuck Schumer's seat, and then Ro Khanna, because I do believe he's a little bit better with fundraising, and I do think he's probably more electable on a wider scale. Although that's just a personal opinion. Um, I believe more progressive voices will end up rising and taking the Democratic nominee as we get closer to 2028. And I do believe JD Vance just has a terrible PR team. And I do believe Trump and the Republican Party as a whole is setting up Marco Rubio to be the next Republican candidate. And I think someone like Josh Hawley, uh, is able to sort of like appeal to the Trump based and the more moderate neoconservative Reaganites in the Republican Party. And I do think Republicans know 2028 is basically a lost cause. Um, I mean, there's a chance they win it, but most likely not at all, especially if gas is still high, but we'll see. Um, and I think 2028, they think Marco Rubio will probably be a better candidate for helping congressional seats and Senate seats. I think Republicans by 2028 will be most worried about making sure that Democrats don't take a huge majority in the House or Senate, and more making sure that they have the ability to take back the House and the ability to take back the Senate by 2030 and possibly win in 2032, but we'll see. That's a really long time away. But I think that's more what 2028 will be for Republicans is, I guess, preparing for 2030 rather than caring for 28. And then for Democrats, it's going to be trying to take the trifecta. I do think Democrats will take back the House in 2026. I'm not 100% sure about the Senate. The Senate's probably 50-50 on if Democrats take it. So I think 2028 will be taking back the presidency. And if they didn't take the Senate, taking the Senate. So let's go ahead and get started with my prediction. So we'll start off with our safe states, which will be Kansas, Wyoming, Idaho. Montana will probably be safe, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing smaller margins. But you would have to have a really strong Republican candidate or Democratic candidate to take back Montana. I could see Nebraska possibly going down in margins, even though it is just Trump country, but I could see it possibly going down in margin over time because of tariffs, and that did hurt a lot of farmers. Although Nebraska's this district, the second district or first, probably the second district, I believe, is not safe. But Nebraska as a whole and the first district and the biggest district are safe Republican. I do expect Missouri. I do think Republicans will lose ground in Missouri a good bit. We could possibly see more like 2020 numbers, but it probably still goes red. Utah definitely goes red, and then we'll see. Indiana, I could see Indiana fall down to like a 13% margin, but no more than that probably. Kentucky probably stays Republican. Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama. South Carolina with Lindsey Graham could be hurting the Republican Party in South Carolina, but we'll see. West Virginia does stay Republican, and Alaska, I don't know if it stays. stay safe red. I could see Alaska going down in margin, especially with Trump's approval rating is being so terrible right now. His approval rating will only continue to rise. And we have to remember that right now gas is $4 a gallon nationally, which that probably will go back down, assuming that this peace deal that Trump is talking about does go through. But a lot of damage was done. The gas will probably really only hurt Republicans in 2026. We'll see how 2028 acts out. But we're also seeing much slower job growth than we did during the last year of the Biden administration. In the last 16 months under Biden, we saw, I believe, 1.1 million jobs added to the economy, where in Trump's second term, in his past 500 days, I think it's a little over 16 months now. What is it, like 18 months now? Because we're closing again. We're getting closer to 2 years, but we're five, and yeah, in Trump's past 500 days, how we've seen only around 700,000 jobs get added to the economy. Now, you may think that's a good number, but the thing is that number will most likely get rounded down, and we're not seeing as much real job growth as we did before. As in Trump's first term, he only added a little over 100,000. I believe it was 180,000 jobs to the economy in his first year. And the thing was, that number was originally around 700,000, but that number got rounded down by 400,000 after we saw the government do more detailed research on how many jobs were actually added to the economy. So I do expect the same thing to happen near the end of 2026. So we are seeing much lower job growth in Trump's first 2 years than Biden's last year in office. So that's really hurting Republicans, and that could continue to 2028. Gas prices are rising. The Iran war is historically unpopular. And the war right now has cost $33 billion. And also, Republicans can't run on Republican values, really, about cutting the deficit, because Republicans haven't cut the deficit at all. The Trump administration has only added to the deficit by trillions and isn't really doing anything to cut anything. I mean, they did have Doge would cut, like, I believe it was like 50 billion at most, but that has been completely overshadowed. It basically paid for 4 months in the Iran war. So, and also we have seen President Trump expand executive power, so Republicans can't really run on making the government smaller or more libertarian ideals of the Republican Party, because they just didn't do that. So I believe Republicans are gonna have a hard time running in on really showing that they did follow Republican values. And I do believe that the Republican base as a whole will be really unenthusiastic, and we could see low voter turnout in these more red states. Now let's go to the safe states for Democrats, which will be California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, New Mexico, Hawaii, Minnesota, New York, all of the New England states besides New Hampshire may be safe. I think we will see it revert to probably 2020 numbers, if I had to assume. Yeah, New Hampshire's probably not safe, but it's probably around an 8-point margin. This district in Maine will be safe, and Maine as a whole, New Jersey, Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, and DC. And for New Jersey, you may say, hey, Kamala Harris only won it by 6 points. But if we go to the governor's elections in 2025, we saw New Jersey vote for a Democrat by 14 points and in Virginia by 15 points. So Democrats are making regains in Virginia and New Jersey. Illinois will be safe. That's probably all of the safe states for the Democrats. Now, after safe states, it's 221 to 121. We'll now go to the likelies, which will be this district in Nebraska for Republicans. And then Florida will Alaska will be likely. Florida will probably be a likely. We'll probably see it fall down to, I don't think it will fall back down to that 3-point margin we saw in 2020. If we go to the Senate elections, we saw Rick Scott in 2024 run his race by nearly 13 points, and Marco Rubio won Florida by 16 points in 22. I mean, Florida is basically just a red state now. Um, I don't think Florida will fall back down to that 5 point margin, but with how unpopular Trump is, I wouldn't be surprised. But I do have Marco Rubio on the ticket, former senator from Florida, and he is Cuban American, so that could help in Florida with a large Cuban American population. So I do think Florida is likely probably goes to Marco and Josh by around 8 points. Now, Iowa, I do expect Democrats to make gains in Iowa. We could see it possibly fall down to 2016 numbers of 9 points. 2012, Obama won it by 5 points. So who knows what's going to go on with Iowa. I do think it will fall down to maybe 7 to 8 points. But Republicans do still keep it. In Ohio, I do expect to stay pretty Republican. I mean, yeah, there's really no reason to think it won't go more than 7 points. Yeah, I'm probably gonna say Ohio probably goes 7 to 6 points to the Republican candidates in 2028, and I do expect this district of Maine to go to Marco by around 8 points, and I expect this New Hampshire to be likely and go to the Democrats by around 7 points. Now, let's get to the swing states, and you may notice that I haven't filled out Texas yet, and that is because Texas is having a historically close primary race right now between Ken Paxton and James Tallarico. As we're seeing the Hispanic population leave the Republican Party in droves, I do expect Texas to be really close, and it will fall back down to 2020 numbers, where Trump only won it by around 6 points. I expect to see that happen again. I expect Texas to really only go to Republicans by around, based off polling we're seeing between Ken Paxton and James Tallarico, I do think we will see Texas fall back down to 5 to possibly even 4 points. We could see it even in 2018 Senate race close, where Cruz only won it by 2.6 points. And Texas right now is a majority minority state. Whites only make up around 40% of the Texas population, and minorities do vote for the Democratic Party more than they vote for the Republican Party. And with Trump just being historically unpopular, I do think we will see Texas shift to the left by a lot more than expected. But we'll see. Who knows? I do expect this district in Nebraska to go to the Democrats by around 6 points. Now we're on to the true swing states. I'll go ahead. Even though Arizona is a Republican-leading swing state, it has two Democratic senators and a Democratic governor. And since I have Ruben Gallarigo on this ticket, I do expect Arizona to go to the Ro Khanna and Ruben, the Democrats. I also expect Pennsylvania, who has a Democratic governor right now, and is expected to re-elect him in the 2026 Senate race, 2026 midterms, to go blue by around 1 to 2 points. I do expect the same thing to happen in Michigan. They have Gretchen Whitmer as governor, and she's doing okay in polling. Although I do expect Michigan to be one of the closer swing states, as we're seeing in 2026 polling, that it is really the biggest toss-up race out there, and I do think that will lead on to 2028. I think besides North Carolina, I think Michigan is probably the second best chance Republicans have at winning a swing state. Based off polling for John Ossoff in the 2026 Senate race, I do expect Georgia to also go blue, but it will be a close race. I do still expect North Carolina to go red, even though we're seeing very good polling for former Governor Roy Cooper to win his Senate race in 2026. But North Carolina as a whole is still a Republican-lenient swing state. And we saw Trump, it was the only swing state that Trump won in 2020. He won it by 1.3 points. And I don't think someone like Ro Khanna, a progressive, could probably win it. I do think it will be hard in North Carolina for Democrats to take it, and I do think that will be a close race. In Wisconsin, I do expect Democrats to take it by a slim margin, around Biden numbers in 2020. I do think definitely will be a tough race for really either side to win. But I do think it is important to remember that in 2024, Wisconsin was the closest swing state to flipping to Kamala Harris. So I do expect Wisconsin to flip back to the Democratic Party. And if we go over to Nevada, if we go to the Senate races, we saw a Democrat win his Senate race in 2024 in Nevada and in 2022 in Nevada, both Republican years. And we go to the governor's race. Nevada did elect a Republican governor in 2022, so that does make things complicated. I do think Nevada will be a toss-up, but we go to the presidential race. Even though Trump won it by 3 points in 2024, if we go to 2020, Biden won it by 2 points. In 2016, we saw Clinton won it by 2 points, and it was the only swing state that Clinton won in 2016. And in 2012, Obama won it by 6 points, of course. So I do think Nevada will be a close race. I do think Nevada was shifting to the right, but due to the unpopularity with Trump, and they have 2 Democratic senators, I do expect Ro Khanna to be able to take it and bring it back to the 2-point margin that we saw in 2020 and 2016. Anyway, this is my updated 2028 election prediction. Thank you all for watching, and peace out.